There is a UFC fighter that has such a wild and disgusting criminal history that I am honestly shocked that he is even allowed to compete in the biggest promotion in MMA. Today, we're going to take a look at the dark criminal history of UFC Middleweight Sedriques Dumas. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. So right here, I have an article from Sportskeeda written by Puneet Sharma saying, how did Sedriques Dumas fight at UFC Atlantic City despite arrest 1.5 months ago? A deep dive into the domestic violence allegation and other charges. So this right here says UFC middleweight fighter Sedriques Dumas recently competed on the UFC on ESPN 54 card, which took place on March 30th at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. That was the card where Joaquin Buckley broke into the welterweight rankings against Vicente Luque, and Manon Fiorot put on a incredibly boring main event win performance against Aaron Blanchfield. This says his appearance at the event has led to many questions regarding how the Reaper was allowed to compete despite having multiple ongoing cases against him. He was arrested on February 13th on the charges of domestic battery. At first a felony, the charge was later reduced to a misdemeanor. And here we have the charges in Escambia County Sheriff's Office. Sedriques Devin Dumas, arrested, as you can see right here, degree felony reduced to a misdemeanor. And it says battery, touch, or strike. And this is an open case. You can see right up here, that it says open. This was on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. The police report mentioned that the 28-year-old allegedly hit the mother of his child in the face and scratched her. The report also mentioned that one of the police officers saw a message where Dumas admitted to hitting the person in concern. Sounds like, he was like, hey, let's get together for a little Valentine's Day thing. The night ends with a domestic violence charge. This is not the first time that Sedriques Dumas has had a run-in with the law. He has multiple run-ins. He has faced 12 arrests since 2014. He's been arrested more than once per year for the last 10 years. And we'll take a look at just how drastic and violent some of these charges are. And I do want to say that some of these are open cases, and everything here is just my opinion about this fighter being a part of the UFC and my thoughts on the alleged actions he's committed. Now you can see right here, it says criminal history follows UFC prospect Sedriques Dumas into the octagon. And this article is from Keith Schillen from Sherdog, and this was just before his UFC debut against Josh Fremd at UFC Fight Night 221. Dumas, he was awarded his UFC contract after a 47-second submission win over Matej Panaz on the Dana White Contender Series. Dumas' fight in front of UFC President Dana White on August 30th. Less than 2 months after a previously unreported altercation involving the fighter spilled out of the Seville Quarter, a bar in Pensacola, Florida. According to a Pensacola Police Department report filed on July 3rd, which was obtained by Sherdog.com, Dumas allegedly struck Alyssa Lewis, a 21-year-old woman, in the face during an incident that unfolded across several blocks of downtown Pensacola. The case was closed days later without any arrests being made. However, eyewitness accounts and a Mirandized interview with Dumas convey a harrowing scene. As described in the police report, officers responded to Dumas' residence later that evening and took him into custody. The police searched his residence and his girlfriend's vehicle for a firearm, but did not find a weapon. Dumas confirmed he was involved in a brawl, claimed it was started by Alyssa Lewis, the woman that he allegedly hit in the face, a group of women she was with, and her boyfriend, Ethan Holland. An independent witness told police that Dumas initiated the melee. Lewis told police and Sherdog.com that a verbal argument and a brief shoving match between her and her friends and Dumas and his friends occurred after the fighter made an unprovoked remark toward a pregnant woman in the group. Dumas confirmed to police that he made a comment about a girl being pregnant in the bar and said Lewis was upset and walked up to him and began kicking him. Dumas claimed that he pushed Lewis away, and which is when Ethan Holland grabbed him. According to the police report, employees at the bar separated them and escorted them outside, where officers stood by to assist in dispersing the groups. After they were separated, Dumas and his friends allegedly attacked the victim's boyfriend a short distance away from the building. Police checked Dumas for warrants and searched him for weapons at the scene. Minutes later, after receiving a report that Dumas had pulled a pistol, officers responded to another altercation between the groups a couple blocks from the bar. When officers arrived at the scene, Holland had a visible injury to his face and was bleeding from his mouth. Lewis was also injured around her face. Lewis claimed that Dumas brandished a firearm and said she feared he was going to shoot someone, so she struck him, and he responded by pistol whipping her. So here I have the injuries allegedly sustained by Alyssa Lewis in this altercation, and I do want to give a graphic warning. There is injuries that are a result of a potential battery here, so just a quick warning about that before I show this. This is allegedly from Alyssa Lewis's mother on Facebook. Dana White, there's a fighter out of Pensacola named Dumas who is fighting August 30th in your Contender Series Season 6 event. He punched my 98-pound daughter in the face at a bar in Pensacola Saturday night. Get him off the card. We fully intend to be at the event with posters and flyers if he fights. Alyssa Lewis posted this of her black eye, and this says, SD, the Reaper Dumas hits like a bitch. Now, this is not the start or end of Sedriques Dumas' criminal history. His criminal history dates back to January 2014 when he was arrested for shoplifting. The charges were not pursued. He was arrested again in September of 2015 for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon without intent to kill and trespassing on school property with a weapon or firearm. The prosecution agreed to dismiss the charges and plea it down to possession of a weapon or ammunition by a delinquent adult. Dumas' run-ins with police continued in January of 2016 when he was arrested for resisting arrest and obstruction without violence. He was later found guilty and sentenced to abide by court restrictions. That same year, in December, Dumas was arrested for domestic battery. The police report states that Dumas assaulted a woman identified as the mother of his child who lived with him at the time. The victim sustained a minor injury to her eye. He was found guilty on the charge and issued 1 year probation, had to pay court costs, and had to complete domestic violence intervention classes. A no-contact order with the victim was issued, and Dumas was subjected to drug and alcohol testing. A month later, he was arrested for loitering or prowling, and once again convicted and sentenced to abide by court convictions. In March 2017, Dumas violated his probation by not following the court mandates of his domestic violence charge. Dumas picked up a driving with a suspended license charge in 2021 and was found guilty. And after being signed by the UFC in August of 22, Dumas was arrested in November on a DUI charge, which remains as an open case in Escambia County Court. This gives you guys a pretty clear idea of the man that Sedriques Dumas allegedly is. He is allegedly a woman-beating, shoplifting, violent firearm-toting woman beater. And the UFC maintains his status on their roster. And here you also have him, and I won't show all of this, it is a 10-minute video, but Sedriques Dumas also live streamed himself getting arrested by Florida police. You have him here, you see him right here on the screen, you see the police also in the video. That was for the Valentine's Day arrest, or a couple days before actually. So multiple cases allegedly involving domestic violence within a couple days of each other. And it seems like he is extremely violent towards the mother of his child. Listen, I'm not saying that the UFC is a organization that needs to have the most morally upstanding people. It is cage fighting. You know, for fuck's sake, it is cage fighting. There are going to be some crazy people in there. We've seen the allegations that have come up against Conor McGregor, the crimes and allegations that have come up from John Jones before. It's no secret that there's these type of people exist in the world, in professional sports, but specifically in cage fighting. You know, a lot of people that are elite cage fighters tend to have a couple of loose screws, and that's not an excuse. It's just the reality of the situation. And, you know, that makes me wonder if the UFC should allow somebody like this to compete in their organization. I know they're not UFC employees. They're technically independent contractors, but let me know your guys' thoughts down below about that. Moving on, Sedriques Dumas has also been outed for trying to allegedly charge $100 for an interview from media members. And this here says, journalists shouldn't pay for interviews for several reasons. One, ethical concerns. Paying for interviews can be seen as a form of bribery, which undermines the integrity of journalism. It can create conflicts of interest, bias, and compromise the credibility of the story. Two is access. Paying for interviews can create a situation where only those willing to be paid will speak to journalists. This could exclude important sources who may not be comfortable with receiving payment or who may not want to be seen as selling the story. And then you also have quality of information. If interviewees are paid for their information, they may be incentivized to provide sensational or exaggerated details rather than truthful information. Overall, paying for interviews is generally considered unethical and can compromise the integrity of journalism. But that didn't stop UFC debutant Sedriques Dumas from asking to be reimbursed. So here we have Sedriques Dumas being DM'd, and this says, "Good afternoon. Quick question. My name is Steven Reichel, and I host a podcast called Combat Deviance on Belly Up Sports and wanted to extend you an invitation to join us for a 20-minute interview that we typically do on our show every Friday night from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Would you happen to be available this coming Friday, December 9th at 10 p.m. Eastern?" And he said, "Yeah, I just got to tell my manager. Completely understandable. Appreciate the time. We can do it, but I'm seeing now." And the journalist says, "Okay." He then follows up and says, "Good afternoon. Just circling back, wondering if you got the okay." Sedriques Dumas says, "Yeah, but they said you have to pay $100. That's just the fee. Since I'm in the UFC now, do y'all do Venmo or Cash App or PayPal?" The reporter says, "Sorry, I'll have to pass. Never had to pay for an interview for any athletes, UFC, NFL, MLB, etc. So best of skill in your upcoming fight, my friend." Sedriques Dumas says, "Look, go comment on someone else. That's ho shit." The interviewer says, "LOL, your reaction says everything, my friend. Media don't pay for interviews. When you do media, you always got your hand out. I ask if you treated them the same as me. It's a legitimate question. But ho shit? You lost me, buddy. I see how you go about things. Now, I wish you all the best in your career." Brutal grammar. Sorry, guys. Sedriques Dumas says, "You sound like a bitch, and people do pay for their time to speak. Bro, comment is how some shit come in my inbox, you chasing clout. Look, stop writing for real. It's over and done." And then the interviewer says, "Nope, I'm just not a sucker, and I always call out nonsense when I see it. This is no different. Media is helping you. That's ridiculous. Nonsense. LOL, no one is clout chasing." Sedriques Dumas' management came out and said, "So a no-name media outlet wants to interview a client who is preparing for his debut. Said client asks for money to do the interview. So-called journalist gets upset that he asked for money. I encourage all media members to ask anyone from Ariel to Luke Thomas to Mike to Mark if I have ever asked for a payment for a client. It's never happened. The so-called reporter has 78 views on his most popular YouTube video on his page and is upset that my client wants to be paid for his time. I applaud my client because really anyone can say they're a reporter and start doing interviews with athletes under the guise of media. Stay off my guy. He will get all the pertinent media during fight week." Now, I do understand defending your athlete, but that is a little wild, in my opinion. This is Sedriques Dumas. This is the man that has gone to jail 12 times in 10 years. Now, I don't know the guy. but I can tell off of information that's out there about him, police records, it just seems like a terrible person in my opinion. This doesn't affect his fighting skills, anything like that. He actually did get completely screwed in his loss to Nursultan Ruzaboyev on that Atlantic City card. He got poked in the eye. They let it go. They called it a TKO. It should have been a no contest, maybe a disqualification. He did get screwed on that, but that is my take, guys. I don't understand how the UFC has people like, I mean, I guess I do understand. And especially, you know, Dana White being in charge of the company, he doesn't seem to take much issue with putting his hands on women. So I think that somebody like this is a bad look for the UFC. I don't think they're going to do anything about it unless he, you know, I don't know. I don't think they're going to do anything about it unless he loses fights. They probably care more about him losing fights than they do about him being a criminal. So let me know your guys' thoughts down below. Do you think that there should be some sort of disciplinary action, code of conduct in, you know, for UFC fighters? Somebody like this or somebody like John Jones, who have, you know, proven in police record, it's been proven in police records that they are physically violent with women. I think that this is terrible, that someone that is a professional cage fighter, that is a trained killer, can quite literally put the thing they train every day to do to use on the mother of their child, their wife, significant other, a random woman in a bar, things like that. I think it's terrible. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. Do you think that there should be disciplinary action or a code of conduct for the UFC when their fighters do things like this? Let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you want access to extra content aside from my regular videos, click the link in the description down below to become a channel member and get access to members-only live streams and other bonus perks. Or click the join button on our channel homepage. And if you're interested in some non-MMA content from me, check out my weekly podcast, the Hissyfit podcast, and check out my personal channel, Wyatt's World. I'll have them both linked in the description down below. Go watch this suggested video, and I'll see you next time.